It was a steel-grey morning, cold winds howling like the ghosts of slain warriors as they billowed in from the North Sea and scoured the dreary fenlands. There was no comfort to be found on that bleak stretch of coast, nothing to hide a man's shrinking skin from the lash of the autumn storms. To most of the 50 horsemen struggling across a headland in the teeth of a gale, the blasted landscape was a glimpse of hell. Wrapped in their thick woolen cloaks, they rode with heads bowed, dreaming of hot food, spiced wine, warm beds, and pliant women. Their leader was different. He rode with a straight back, head tilted upwards, glorying in the rawness of the cold as it cut through his layers of mail and wool and made his blood pump faster. The wind, the cry of the gulls, the pounding of the grey seas against splintered cliffs, all combined to induce a kind of euphoria in him. His youth helped. Ambrosius Aurelianus was just 17 years old, and riding out on his first command. His father, the consul Aurelius, had dispatched him to inspect the 9 main fortresses guarding the Saxon shore. "Begin in the south," his father had ordered back in Londinium, placing his thick index finger against Porta Saderni, the southernmost of the chain of forts, on a map of eastern Britannia, "and work your way around the coast to Branadunum." Ambrosius nodded impatiently. There was no need to explain the route. He knew the layout of his father's province intimately, having studied and explored most of it from an early age, as soon as he was old enough to back a horse. Still, Aurelius was all grave formality. In the presence of his subordinates there was no father-son relationship. Ambrosius was just another junior officer, being entrusted with a routine but important task. "What are you to look for?" asked Aurelius, raising a thick eyebrow at his son. The consul was a heavy man, stocky and bow-legged from a career spent mostly in the saddle, galloping from one trouble spot to another. Barely 40, he had the look of a man 10 years older, all the hair rubbed from his scalp, his blunt features scored with deep lines and wrinkles. He had good cause to look tired. Originally a civilian title, Aurelius's duties as consul had come to embrace the upkeep of the Saxon shore forts. This was once the responsibility of the Roman military, but since the departure of the legions, it had fallen to powerful landowners like Aurelius to oversee the defence of the island. Ambrosius cleared his throat. He knew his father's temper and how it could suddenly explode, turning the ponderous man standing before him into a raging, purple-faced monster. It didn't happen often, but slackness and neglect of duty were 2 certain ways of waking the beast inside Aurelius. "The state of the fortifications," he answered promptly. "Any sign of deterioration in the walls are to be noted and reported to you. The number of men in each fort, the state of their equipment, morale, and supplies. Any recent desertions, punishments, and casualties." Aurelius held his gaze for a long moment. "Good," he said finally, just as perspiration was starting to bead on Ambrosius's forehead. "I will give you 50 men. Light horse, not enough to impress the foederati perhaps, but I cannot spare any more." He failed to explain why, and Ambrosius knew better than to ask. Aurelius had plenty of enemies, especially in Londinium, and preferred to keep as many armed men about him as possible.